I want to bring in David Avella. He's the president of the Republican PAC, GOPAC, and former DNC spokesperson Karen Finney, also an MSNBC contributor. Appreciate your both being here. David, I want to start with you because you've got a unique perspective on how this works as someone who runs a PAC. How do you do that and maintain transparency in races like this one?
Well, you have to follow the rules set up by the Internal Revenue Service, who was put in charge of this when Democrats and Republicans locked arms and passed McCain-Feingold, where that legislation essentially said we're going to take the main control of the political system away from the parties and away from the candidates and give a lot of influence to outside groups. And arguably, if we want to get control back in this, we have to allow candidates and political parties to play under the same rules that the outside groups play under.
But the thing is, you say follow McCain-Feingold. It's remarkable how much those rules have been eroded in the wake of Citizens United. Karen, given that the floodgates have been opened as they have, why judicial races specifically? Why is that one consequence of this?
Well, because we know redistricting was a big issue in 2010, and there have been a lot of challenges to some of those redistricting maps. And so statewide judicial races, these state Supreme Courts, handle a lot of those kinds of cases. And it's also, I mean, when you are, Republican or Democrat, you're trying to control the state legislature and the court as a way to ensure that the legislation that you're putting in place, the policies you're putting in place, are protected. But one thing I would just say, I disagree with David on, not surprisingly. I think the biggest problem we have is that the penalties are meaningless. Traditionally, they have continued to be meaningless. In some instances, yes, you have to pay a penalty, but the penalty itself is such a small portion of the amount of money raised overall that a lot of PACs and organizations make the sort of calculated, decision that, we'll just pay the fee later.
Right, and I think that story that we just heard about Justice Hudson is a real illustration of the consequences of those slack penalties. I mean, look at the numbers, too. Dark money went from $5.2 million in 2006 to over $300 million in the 2012 election. And it's surging into these races in places like North Carolina. David, is there any way in which that's a problem in your view?
Well, Ronan and Karen, be careful. You're going to talk yourself into thinking that candidates and political parties ought to be able to also be able to take unlimited contributions so they can take on these outside groups. And I would also say to all my friends who are lovers of Barack Obama, had it not have been for an outside group called Organizing for America, he may not have become president of the United States because Hillary Clinton had the political machine locked up for her. And he needed to go to an outside group to be able to organize to get him momentum in New Hampshire and in Iowa and South Carolina to ultimately go on to get the nomination. So we don't want to be selective in which outside groups we want to target as being the bad guys.
He's right, Karen. This is a bipartisan problem.
Yeah, it is well, look, I mean, both sides would say, Democrats would say we're not going to unilaterally disarm if this is what's going to be happening on the Republican side. Big difference, though, between something like Americans for Prosperity or Crossroads GPS and Organizing for America. Let's just be very clear. Two very different types of organizations, three very different types of organizations there.
But I do think across the board we need some kind of reform. This is a money spigot that needs to be closed. David Avella, Karen Finney, appreciate it.
Thank you.
And up next, say it is